Welcome guys and gals. This is your host Frog Prince Rana, and thank you for dropping by. This is the fourth video in my security series. Quick recap. First part was on what I think the most important step for any internet user, and that is a dedicated password manager. Second part was on how to secure your local data using free VeraCrypt. Last video was on what VPN does and what it doesn't do. Today's video is about the elusive firewall. In all honesty, firewall can appear to be very daunting, and without understanding of what it does and how it works, it is not really secure. Format of this video will be, first, I will rattle on about internet communication and how firewall is there to protect you, followed by understanding basic functionality of a firewall, then additional features that are also available. Finally, we will go through a couple of available free firewalls on various platforms. But all our discussion regarding firewall is not tied down to any specific platform. What we talk about today is just as valid in Windows as it is in OSX or Linux. Starting with a very bird's eye view of network communication. Most of us connect to internet over a router. Some of us have multiple switches to have more computers connected locally. All these devices have an IP address that belongs to a local range. Let's back up a little bit. IP address is how devices send data to one another. Think of it like your home address. There are two versions, IPv4 and IPv6. For an IPv4 address, we have 4 sets of numbers separated by a full stop. These numbers can be anything from 0 to 255, which means we have range of address starting from 0.0.0.0 to 255.255.255.255. That is a total of 2 to the power 32, or a bit more than 4.29 billion addresses. Out of these pools, some addresses like all zeros and all 255, well, depending on context, those are either invalid or default root. A class A network number 127 is assigned the loopback function. That is all addresses starting with 127 dot. So whenever a device sends any data to those addresses, the data will loop back to that device itself. There are also some reserved for local network. These addresses are not publicly reachable. You need to be part of that network to be able to access it. So, the computer you are on, it has a loopback address of 127.0.0.1. If you're connected to a router or a network, it will also have a local IP address. At my home, my local network is at 10.66.77. something. My main PC sits at 10.66.77.10. My server sits at 10.66.77.1. All other devices have their own address, and they are all using Virgin Broadband to access internet. When I open my browser and type in an address, my computer is making an outbound request, which gets passed to the router. The router keeps track of the address making the request and then sends it off to the wide web. From any web server's point of view, the router's public address is the client making the request. So all my devices would be logged as the same public IP. When a response comes back, our router knows who made the request and passes it back to that client. The point to note here is, well, any data from outside only gets your computer when you have initiated the communication. May it be opening a page on browser or logging onto Skype and such. That makes sense, right? Suppose you type in my public address on your browser using HTTP. That means you're making a request to what in reality is my Virgin router at port 80. Now my router has no idea what to do with that incoming data. It wasn't requested. Thus, it has no notion where to forward this data. This is where router options like port forwarding comes in. Basically, we tell the router that any incoming data to specified ports should be forwarded to a given address. This is how we can run web servers, VPN servers and such, where these services do not initiate a connection but responds to it. Software like torrents use a feature that I'm not too fond of, again due to security, that is called UPNP or Universal Plug and Play. If the router has UPNP mode and is enabled, that allows compliant devices to automatically set port forwarding rules for themselves. Brrr, I do not like it at all. It is a nightmare to set rules in that case. With that out of the way, let's talk about firewall. Well, in this context, a firewall is a hardware or a software solution that will either allow, block or reject any inbound or outbound data based on its settings. Most of the routers supplied by internet provider do have a very basic incoming firewall. More on this later, but for now, we will be focusing on software firewall. Now, why is a firewall important? I have heard the argument that only a software pirate wants a firewall. It was stupid when I heard it first, and it is still stupid. I have been a programmer all my adult life and part of my childhood. I have written countless software which people actually install on their devices and used it over different platforms and mobile devices. If I had bad intention, well, for computers, OSX has a nice sandbox feature for what seems like ages. Basically, that means a program is meant to run at a lower privilege that stops it from snooping around or damage the operating system. Initial Windows had no such feature. It was surprisingly easy to delete whole System32 folder. Recent version tries to mitigate it using UAC or User Account Control. Unfortunately, the implementation is so damn intrusive that the first result in Google at the time of this script was on how to disable it on Windows 10. Jeez. But deleting files is an amateur move. It is what noobs do. The goal of any such attack is really either harvesting data or holding it for ransom, or for DDoS attack. Mobile devices handle it much better, and Windows app and not desktop software is given permission on what it can access. But normal software has way too much freedom. I can write a software that can steal your whole contact list. I can get your password if you have it saved in browser. I can have a look through all your documents and all your photos. Before you freak out, a lot of this access is a necessity. Imagine a word processor. I use LibreOffice. By default, it will try to save it in My Documents. Any linked images will by default be read from My Pictures and such. It will need to have access to My Downloads. There are tools we use to monitor what resources an application is using, which includes monitoring file system, registry, memory, and such. But that is only for forensic. Day to day, I don't think anyone does that. Obviously, my software having access to all your data doesn't mean much. That is, if my intention is harvesting. In that case, I need to have those data myself. What is easier than to get that same software that collected it to send it to a server somewhere on the net? If it is for ransomware, well, you're in deep doo-doo. Most of the ransomware has no intention of actually honoring whatever deal it is proposing, and those software would simply encrypt your data and ask for money. There is no 100% protection from that, only precaution and backup if things go belly up. Nowadays, almost every software I use, including games, wants to know more about me and my habit. My stand on this is simple. I paid for the game or the software. I don't want to tell the publisher when I launch their software what my current setup is, How long I have been playing it for? Nothing. Well, what if the publisher forces me? Then it becomes a question of how badly do I want it? So when Blizzard made Diablo 3 that it needed constant internet connection, well, I wanted it badly and have fond memories of getting it and playing it. Without a firewall, every software has full control of what they are sending, when they are sending and such. If you haven't used a firewall, you would be surprised to see how often recent software tries to communicate to outside world, even things that has no reason to. That was my take on why use a firewall. Well, this is the deal. Starting with outbound. A browser and a game can both make a HTTP request. You may want the browser to be able to connect, but not the game. A firewall has to know how to deal with the process making a request. It will check its rule list for the process and applicable rules. We need to talk about protocols first. In simple terms, a protocol in this context is an established set of rules that determine how data is transmitted between different devices. We have our low-level IP. I shouldn't say IP protocol, as IP itself stands for Internet Protocol, and I would end up with Internet Protocol. The other two common ones that you'll come across on firewall is TCP and UDP. These are subset of IP. These are two most common protocol. The other one you would come across is ICMP. Next is a port number. It is a numeric range from 0 to 65,535, where 0 is reserved. We happen to have agreed on certain ports to be used for certain services. So when I have been saying HTTP communication, well, we have agreed on port 80 for HTTP using TCP protocol. For HTTPS, we have agreed on TCP port 443. But if we choose to, we can have our HTTP running at any port we want, as long it is available to the device and router and such. Most software will use one or both TCP and UDP. For example, a browser uses TCP port 80 and 443 for HTTP and HTTPS communication. To speed up browsing, it may also use asynchronous DNS, in which case it will also open up some UDP port. Software like Skype would open a range of ports as needed. On the flip side, there are some softwares which communicates over only one or two ports, like FTP, remote desktop and such. TLDR, different software would use different protocols and different ports. Some may immediately open it, some may open it as needed. This is where the complexity arises. Earlier generation of firewalls didn't have any preset rules for activity types or a scanning feature for known applications. With a wizard, it is much easier. Rules option varies from firewall to firewall. Obviously, we have allowed and blocked. Most also comes with a predefined rule set. For example, a rule set for browsers, FTP, email client and such. Which means, instead of specifying all the ports you need to allow your browser to open, you can rely on your firewall database to automatically set it up for you. Finally, this is what is supposed to happen. If a software is trying to make an outbound connection, firewall will check if it is allowed or blocked by rules defined so far. If not, it will stop that communication and prompt you for an action. This should show us application name, protocol, port, and remote address for this connection. For applications that has no business communicating outside ever, well, there would be an option saying block all communication or something similar. That is the one I choose. Basically that says, doesn't matter what protocol or port, block the application regardless. Otherwise, we can allow it for that destination on port, or we can allow it for any destination at that port, or destination and any port, or any destination and any port. The last one is like no firewalling for that application. As a paranoid person, when possible, I would create the rule with the destination address. Most firewall has a notion of global rules. These rules are applied before application rules. The way it generally works, well, for any communication, it will go through the whole list sequentially until it comes to an allow or reject for application in question. Now that was just a summary. There are generally three methods a firewall uses: packet filtering, proxy service, and stateful inspection. And we just covered packet filtering. Let's get into actual setup. We'll come across other options pretty soon. First, we'll go through free Windows firewalls. I personally feel these are as good as paid alternatives like Norton and McAfee. One thing to note, Windows does come with a firewall. Initial release was quite poor, but now it is pretty solid, though not very intuitive. I'm assuming that we're all using Windows 10. As firewall is closely integrated with the operating system, I would always use one that is compatible and recent for that OS. My favorite firewall has been Agnitum Outpost Firewall. But a couple of years ago, the company was bought by Yandex and the software was discontinued. Such a shame, as it was really a great firewall. There is a free version available, but as far as I know, it works reliably up to Windows 8. Windows 10 gets a warning, and I don't deem it to be safe. If you're using Windows 8 or earlier, you may want to track it down. Most options are similar, it may just be called by a different name. For Windows, there are really three types of firewall. Well, to be honest, technically one group is an actual firewall. The other group acts like an interface between Windows Firewall and the end user. And final group is where you route all or some traffic through a cloud service that handles the rule. At the time of writing, I could find three actual firewalls. Well, four to be honest. We have Comodo Firewall, Zone Alarm, TinyWall, and Sophos XG. However, Sophos XG contains its own operating system and will overwrite all data on the computer during the installation process. Therefore, a separate, dedicated computer is needed, which will change into a fully functional security appliance. Then there are two that sits on Windows Firewall. There is MalwareBytes Windows Firewall Control and Payware Glasswire. For final group, we have providers like OpenDNS. I don't consider this to be a firewall at all. It is an added protection. I will go through Comodo first, as it is the one I'm currently using, and the one with most features and, more importantly, settings. When installing, remember to check under Options, as by default, this installer would also install Comodo Dragon Browser. Once installation is finished, you should see this screen needs attention. Like most firewall, Comodo also needs to restart Windows to get the drivers working. I made a small mistake while getting the screenshots. At this point, I would click Advanced View and then change firewall from safe mode to training mode before restarting. After restart, we would get the Secure All Systems Running screen. So what just happened? When I set to training mode, Comodo would automatically create rules for known applications. I have a local Active Directory server. It is just a way to manage users and also means I can use the same credentials to log in to any devices in my network. But this also means during login, my PC would have to communicate a lot with my server using various processes. With training enabled and after restarting, Comodo should automatically fill up the required model. Something else to clarify first. I'm assuming at this point that my PC is clean from any malware, viruses and such. If my system is already compromised, any training or wizard mode by any firewall may actually allow access to a bad process. So please ensure your system is healthy. As the manual mentions, this mode is intended for advanced users and admins who wants to trust existing files on their network. There are a bunch of free software which are available for trusting your existing files. Agnitum Outpost had an option where it could also scan user drive for known applications. I have 6 different web browsers installed. After scanned, Outpost would have created appropriate rules for all 6, whereas with Comodo's training mode, I would have to launch all 6 browsers for Comodo to create the rules. So once in training mode, I would basically launch all the programs I normally use, which means browsers, programming IDEs, audio, photo, video editors, Skype, Steam, and such. At times, I would even let it run for a couple of hours, while making sure that I'm not running any games or anything that I don't want automatic rules for. Finally, I would change it from training to custom rule set. But that is because I'm a paranoid person who likes to play with dangerous malware and viruses. For a normal person without anything dodgy, leaving to safe mode is advisable and is actually safer than training. There are many settings, and as this is not a Comodo Firewall video, I'll briefly go through the main ones and the ones common with other firewalls. Under Firewall settings, you will find Create rules for safe applications. That means if the application is known by Comodo or by a trusted vendor, it would automatically create Allow rules. We talked about global rules earlier, and you can see I have all outgoing if target is in home and all incoming if sender is in home. This home is set in network zone. Rule sets is a feature that I don't recall in Outpost. This is a neat way to organize rules. On screen you can see setup for web browser rule set. It has 5 allowed followed by a final block and log rule. Further looking into allow outgoing HTTP, we can see it is set to HTTP ports. This is another group that would have the actual set of ports. As you can see, HTTP ports consist 80, 443 and 8080. Very neat. What this all means is, I can give set rules for any application based on this web browser rule set, knowing that these are the only ports it can communicate with. For multiple browsers, well, those are all based on this rule set. Finally, application rules is the list of applications with specified rules. We can add, edit, delete, purge, the standard stuff. So once in a while, I do take a quick look to see if anything is there that it shouldn't be. That was the firewall parts done. Comodo has some additional features that I would quickly run through. They're really quite important. First, we have HIPS or Host Intrusion Protection System. With this enabled, Comodo constantly monitors system activity and stops processes from modifying important files and interfaces. Next is another feature that should be quite neat. I'll admit though, currently I have the same feature of sandboxing using a different product. It is quite a lot to explain, and this video is getting super long on its own. Watch out for the next security video where I'll be talking about sandbox. File rating is good if you have nothing dodgy. If it's on your little one's computer, yes, do have this set on. Advanced protection also offers some settings that I have enabled, especially script analysis. As I mentioned, Comodo had the most things. Now we can breeze through the rest. Zone alarm, personally I hated it. It has some HIPS protection under OS Firewall, but the options are severely limited. Cardinal sin was, on auto learn mode, it did pick up my browsers and gave it complete outbound access. I mean, every port every address, every protocol. There is no concept of rule set, so even if I fix it for Brave browser, I would need to do the same thing for the other 5 browsers. As there is no port grouping, I would need to type all those port number multiple times. So yes, not a fan. Then TinyWall. Well, don't install it remotely as it does warns us. It is a 32-bit software and that is a shame. Similar to Comodo, this has an auto-learn mode, and similar to Zone Alarm, this also gives unrestricted UDP and TCP traffic to Chrome. I still prefer this over Zone Alarm as it does have a bit more options and an easier rule edit window. No other frills. Next are the ones sitting on top of Windows Firewall, and thus I don't care if these are 32 bits. MalwareBytes Windows Firewall Control, in my opinion, does a better job with a proper edit rule windows and a learning mode. One thing I need to clarify. Some learning mode creates allowed rules for digitally signed programs. So if a game is digitally signed, it would be allowed access. Obviously that is not my use case. Thus, I have it on only when I have installed the firewall while monitoring what I'm running. Jumping to Mac OS X, well, it does have a built-in firewall, but it is inbound only firewall, meaning you can stop others from connecting to you, but not stop any malicious program sending data outside. Now that is a lie. OS X do have a packet filter that is based on BSD implementation. Linux users are gonna say, what's so complicated with that? Trust me guys, most OS X users have never used terminal, let alone PF control. For a long time, there were only 2 players in the field, hands-off and Little Snitch. Well, I have been a Little Snitch user for at least 10 years or more, and it is way much better than hands-off. Several years ago I came across Murus, which was much cheaper and was an interface to built-in PF. I bought their Pro version, which also came with Vellum, that is an application layer firewall. It is not as polished or easy to use as Little Snitch. Then again, it was much cheaper. As I am writing this script, there is actually a free, real firewall available for OS X. Let's show you Little Snitch first. I mentioned earlier regarding OS X sandboxing. Thus, a lot of HIPs is built in the system. As you can see, it shows us all existing rules with some grouping. Rule editing is adequate and works the same way as Windows Firewall. Finally, it comes with some factory rules. Finally, a pretty map showing me all the open connections. As you can see, a lot of connections to all around the globe. If I select Firefox, it would give me all the connection for that application. Quick looking at Murus. While installing it for this video, I realized that my version does not work with the latest OS X, and my Pro license is only for previous version. So I can only show you the inbound rules. As you can see, this groups connections by services. You can see the group for file sharing or Samba, which is allowing a group containing user and source address against allowed group of IP address. Finally, Paragon. I was quite excited to check out this free firewall. And well, underwhelmed. It is a firewall in the sense that it allows or block outbound process. The problem is, I couldn't find how to edit a rule. All I could see is allow, block or remove. Moving over to Linux. Well, those who uses Linux should already know how to set up a firewall. All my Linux are without desktop, so I don't have much experience with firewall GUI. There is GUFW firewall that looks pretty simple. Just to give an example, on screen you can see my firewall setup on a Linux box. Basically most if not all Linux firewall would be using this IP table. This format is extremely similar to OS X packet filtering. I guess that was all I can talk on regarding firewall. Oh, one or two, well, actually 3 more things. The first one is security fatigue. A reasonable argument is, if the user gets a lot of confirmation window, soon they would completely ignore what it actually says. Most of the firewall have such options to mitigate it. It can take an approach like TinyWall or Paragon, where it would either use whitelist or user-specific settings to deal with new applications without a pop-up window. Comodo has an option of not showing pop-up. Now, I do agree with the concept, but not in this context. Once I have allowed my browser, it is unlikely that I will get a pop-up unless the browser is wanting to make an abnormal or non-standard communication, and in which case, I do want to know about it. To be honest, HIPS gives a lot more pop-up than firewall. Then again, once that rule is set up, it will not bother you anymore. Second thing, when it comes to firewall, anything is better than nothing. I have my iPhone jailbroken so I can install a firewall in it. That's how serious everyone should be. Final thing, router firewall. It should have a basic one built in and it should always be enabled. On screen, you can see firewall settings for Virgin Hub router. Oh, and IPv4. Well, apparently 4 billion devices aren't really enough. So we have IPv6. And this address space is 2 to the power 128 and has 340 trillion IP addresses. So that should be enough for the time being. However, IPv6 hasn't taken off completely yet, and my Virgin account doesn't come with native IPv6. That is fine. For my local use, IPv4 is much more manageable. This is where I'll end this super long video. Thank you so much for watching and for sticking around till the end. I do hope it was, well, educational and would get you to install a firewall if you don't have one already. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment, and maybe even share it with friends and families. Being a small channel, I do appreciate your help. If you could also subscribe, that would be absolutely fantastic. Welcome, guys and gals. This is your host, Frog Prince Rana, and thank you for